What up, world? What up, world? Welcome to another episode of the Father Figure Podcast. I'm your boy, Reggie George, your host for the night. We appreciate y'all being here. Again, we appreciate y'all subscribing to the Father Figure Podcast. We also appreciate y'all patronizing all things Father Figure. The podcast, the apparel, everything. Again, I am Reggie George. I am joined tonight by two very special guests. My right hand man and my left hand man, but they on the wrong side. We got my lovely wife, Tiffany George, in the house. What's up, baby?
Hello.
And we got my lovely little sister in the house, LaRissa Shells George. I'm a hyphenated name for her.
Thank you.
What up?
Hello.
So again, we gonna go ahead and get it cracking, get right into things, and just kind of give y'all their makeup and what they look like as far as families and fathers and all that good stuff. So, Tiffany, we're gonna start with you. So just tell the people, I know and everybody else know, but what's the basic makeup of our family? I'm talking about just our immediate family.
Okay. So I am the wife of Reggie George, and we have two daughters that are twins, and they are 14 years old, Kennedy and Camden George.
That's it? What you do for a living?
Oh, okay. I am an educator. I have been a teacher for almost 20 years, and I've taught in all areas from elementary, middle, and now I have been teaching about 9 years in high school. South Grand Prairie High School Warriors.
Right. Don't nobody care.
Yes, they do.
And how long you been married?
I have been married, it'll be 19 years this July. Did you know that?
I would have said
yeah,
I would have
always say
said 20.
Right.
I would have said 20.
2001
It
when we
ain't
got
it don't
married,
make
yeah.
it don't make no difference.
I was waiting for
19,
this moment
20.
to call him out.
Hey, like my uncle say, same difference. Risa, and I call her Risa. Her name is LaRissa, but I call her Risa. Risa, give your basic makeup of your family, what you do, if you're married, single, whatever.
I'm single. I have been divorced
Why
for
you start with
15
that?
years because that was the last thing you asked. So there it is. I'm single. I've been divorced for 15 years. I have a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old. My 20-year-old is in her second year of college, and my 17-year-old's a junior at Summit High School. Go Jags. I'm also an educator, special education. I've been in education almost 20 years as well. Tiffany and I graduated college together. She was actually my best friend in high school. She ended up marrying my brother. So she's been in our family for over 20 years. I'm just saying. That's it.
All right, so in life, these are probably my two biggest confidants over the last 1,000 years. But I wanted to have them on the show to really give you the dynamics and the makeup, not only from a female perspective, but from a wife perspective, from a sister perspective, and just give us a different outlook on what fathering looks like. So going back to Tiffany, now tell the people what your childhood looked like as far as parenting, and what you think about fathering, and then what your adulthood looks like as far as parenting and fatherhood.
Okay. So I was raised in a single family for the majority of my life. My mom was the sole provider. I did know who my biological father was. I met him right around the age of 6 years old, and that's when I started visiting him. But when it came to making decisions about rearing, schooling, my upbringing, my mom was the sole person who took care of those responsibilities. My mom did marry my dad, the person I call my dad right now, when I was actually about to graduate high school, and he actually adopted me because he played the role and still plays the role as a father for me now, even though they're no longer together. I also have a very important man in my life that I call my stepdad, and that's who my mom is married to now. I am very fortunate that even in the adulthood life that I have strong father figures that stepped in even after I was grown and played the strong role of mentoring me, fathering me, being very, very supportive men and grandfathers in my children's life. Let's see.
So let me ask you, how do you think any of that dynamic affected your childhood and affects your adulthood?
Okay. I feel like it plays a strong role in how I look at my husband, how I look at other men in their role as fathers, holding them accountable. Even though I didn't see that growing up when I was younger, I know that there was a need. I did have uncles that did things with us. And when I say with us, my cousins and I, we all grew up in a close-knit family. But I feel like those things were very important when it came to mentoring, playing an important role when it came to spending time, building relationships. But that's something that I'm very, very feel very strongly about when it comes to my girls, because I know that those were things that was a gap when I was growing up.
So, do you think it caused any insecurities in father figures, or with Ken and Bill, with them coming along later on, did they close up those insecurities, or you never really felt like you had insecurities?
I feel like there were insecurities. However, when my dad, when he came into the role, he made sure that I felt valued. I had a self-worth. And even Mr. Bill, who is my stepdad now, at this point in my life, I don't feel like there is a gap, but in my rearing when I was growing up, I do feel like there were gaps. But now in life, when I look back, I know that there's some things that would have been done differently if I had a father in the house at that point. But the man that I call my father, that is my father now, and my stepfather, they, even to the day now, if I call them now, the relationships and the conversations that we have, I feel like they were there even when I was growing up because of the connection. And it's all about me feeling a sense of worth, me feeling valued, not just as their daughter, but as a mother and as a wife.
All right, so last question. I know this is kind of sensitive because I've been around for 1,000 years, but what about your relationship with your grandfather?
My grandfather actually passed my junior year of high school. And when I got the news that my grandfather had passed, I was at Reggie's. Reggie and I had just started dating. And he was the father figure from the time I was born, because my mom was a young mother. He did all of the things that a father would do from birth until my mom and I moved from Eastern Arkansas to Conway. And so he was the father figure. He was the provider. He was the security. He was the blanket. And so that was my father up until he passed away. And so his legacy still lives on. My grandmother and my grandfather, they were not together, but he still played a role in all of the grandchildren and his kids' lives.
And we'll tell the story maybe at the end. Thank you, baby. So, Risa, let's start with what fatherhood look like to you as a child, as an adult, and how it affected your childhood, and also how it affected and affects currently your adulthood.
Well, growing up, I had my mom and my dad in the home. We were a military family, so we moved around basically every 2 years. We were picking up and starting over. I felt like it was a great thing. Some people don't adjust well, but I felt like Reggie and I adjusted very well. We made friends easily. We moved around so we could be with my father, because the option was we would go with him for 2 years or he would have to be gone for a year. He did that a couple of years when he went to Greece and Egypt. We didn't go with him, but we spent in Korea. We spent 4 years total in Germany, because we went with him on 2 different trips to Germany. So a lot of times it was just us, and maybe 3 or 4 American other families that we knew. So we were always together. We vacationed. We had a really good upbringing, as far as I thought. So like Reggie and I thought we had money. We did not. We used to always tell the story about how we thought we had, and my mom and my dad tell us differently now, and the things that we know now, we knew we didn't really have much, but we had each other, and that was important. My dad and I'm a daddy's girl. My dad and I are super close. We have our favorite restaurants. We go to the movies every Thursday night. Like, we just have things that we do, him and I, together all the time. Don't act like you're jealous over there.
I'm just making sure people know every Thursday y'all at the movie theater.
And that right there, having him in the home set a foundation for the things that I expected growing up, even from my brother. He had to take out the trash. He had to mow the lawn. Those were things that were expected in our home that, per se, the men did in our home. My mother and I, we never took out the trash. We never washed the cars, and we never cut the grass. So those are some of my expectations for any man that comes into my life, or that has been in my life. Even after I got divorced, I was here, and I would call my brother. He would come wash my car. He would come take out my trash. He did those things. Even though he had his own wife, he still came and took care of my girls and myself. So those expectations are high for me, but I never felt like there was a void, because I've always had my dad. I've always had my brother, my uncles, even my guy cousins step up for my girls, especially. Like, their dad is in their lives, but where he can't be, they are always. Like, it's always a million of us going somewhere. If my daughter's playing basketball, the whole family is there. When I had basketball meetings, my brother was sitting there with me because her dad couldn't be there. So, like, for me, there really wasn't a void, and I try to make sure that there's not one for my girls. And my brother and my father and my uncles and my cousins have always helped me fill those voids if there were any.
So, and I guess I'm gonna ask both of y'all, do you think that upbringing plays a huge part in what you look at when it comes to your father and the father of your children? How do you think upbringing affects the outlooks on how you look at those people?
I feel like it does. Even though, like I said, I did not have a clear picture of what it should have looked like growing up in the house when I was young. There are certain things that I expect Reggie to do when it come to our girls, things that I step back and let him handle when it come to the girls, things that when it involves conversations, of course, as a mother, there's things that I talk to them about, but there's also things that I know that he needs to take the front role and be assertive with, because they'll perceive it differently from him as a father than they would from me as a mother when it comes to school, when it comes to relationships with other people, and even when it comes to relationships as they get older and they start dating.
I totally agree. Some of the things, like she's saying that she allows Reggie to do, I'll call him and I'm like, look here, you need to call your niece and could you have this conversation with her or them? And he's like, yeah, give me a couple of days so she don't know that you called me. But yes, I totally agree. Like there are some things like that I shouldn't kind of be talking to them about that I kind of pass over, which is awesome that I have him to do that for me.
So let me ask the brother question. Do you think Daddy and I put and I'm not going to say too high of a standard, but did they put a high ceiling or a high standard on your husband or your boyfriends? Do you think having...
Yes, absolutely. Like, there's no question to that. Absolutely. Like, you don't have to repeat it. I know exactly what you're saying. Absolutely. Like, I'll have a conversation with you about somebody I'm dating or whatever, and you'll look at me and you'll be like, that didn't even speak to me. I'm like, that has nothing to do with anything. Which, I mean, it really does. It's about a respect factor. But, yes, very high standards from both of y'all. Like, Daddy doesn't say much. He just kind of, if I'm happy, he's happy. But I know y'all have the conversation not around me. But you're very vocal. And I appreciate that because I'm very vocal with you. Like, we talk to each other about just about anything. So, you know, I take the constructive criticism sometimes a little at heart. But, yes, there is a very high standard set by you guys.
Yeah. And I guess really that's my first time really asking. I think I already knew that, but that was my first time asking. And just to tell y'all a little funny story about my first embarrassment. I'm gonna say my first embarrassment from my sister and my pops. Man, I might have been maybe in the 3rd or 4th grade. We stationed in Weisherkheim in Germany, and shout out to all my Weisherkheim people. But I'm getting off the bus, and I was one of the youngest kids who hung out with the older kids, so I would get off the bus with the teenagers. And as we walking up, and we only stayed in this 2-row village of Americans out in this German neighborhood, and I'm walking to the crib and got the teenagers with me, and we just walking and we just hear this yelling, like, oh, he gonna kill me. He gonna kill me. And I see my sister. I see my sister coming around the corner, man. She doing about $120 running. And next thing you know, I see my pops coming. He got the belt and he hawking her down too. Like, oh, here they come. So everybody like, man, who dad and sister is that? And I got my head down. And as they get closer, everybody like, oh, that's your daddy and your sister. like he gonna kill me. Hey, it took me about 2 hours to go in the house. Like, man, I ain't going in there with them. They tripping. But that's a story about really who my father was, who my father really still is. He didn't change a lot, just because being in the military for 120 years and really being strict because that's all he knew, it really molded us into accountable and responsible people, just because the military just didn't ask for anything less of him, and he didn't ask for anything less of us. And I'm gonna ask a super sensitive question. What about your relationship with your grandfather?
I was his favorite, of course.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's what they all say. And I was too.
And no, all your cousins tuning in.
I was the favorite girl. I can give that. I was the favorite girl. But I feel like all my cousins are going to say the exact same, would feel the same way that my brother and I feel. Like, I was super close to my grandfather as well. We had our own private conversations, talked to him all the time about any and everything. He would just call me out of the blue and just say, hey, I was thinking about you. What you doing? Just very present in everyone's lives. He always said we had the best family in the whole world. And I agree. And that's because he made it that way. He was the patriarch of our family, and he made sure everyone was very tight-knit, made sure that we all came together, made sure that we all, had dinners together. For birthdays, we would all get together. Everybody's birthday, we would get together, and everybody in the family, because we had a huge family, would give $1. You come out of there with almost $100. But, that's my and we did it at their house. But he just wanted to make sure we were all together at some point throughout the year. But between him and my father, like, they are everything to me. And, it was really rough when my grandfather passed, because I feel like everybody felt that way about him. Like, he was everything to us. So, like, if we needed anything, if we needed to talk about anything, he was always there, and he never judged.
And a lot of the, a lot of the movement is about that legacy. It's my grandfather, my father, my father-in-laws, my all of the father figures, but it started with my grandfather. And that's what I was going to tell the story earlier, but if I can get through it.
Look at you.
When Tiffany's grandfather passed, I remember being down at their house, and my grandparents have a room they call the sewing room, and me and Tiffany were in the sewing room. I was kind of consoling her. And my grandfather came in, and he just kind of looked in the sewing room, and he thought I was in there being mannish, which any other time I probably would have been. But he just kind of walked by, and he was like, y'all get out of that sewing room. And so we kind of walked out, and somehow we ended up back in their room where my mom and my grandmother were. And as my mom and my grandmother were in the back consoling Tiffany, my grandfather, like, boy, what I told you about being in there doing that. And I was like, Grandpa, her grandfather just passed. So me and him walk back in the back room, and I sit down to console Tiffany. And before I could even sit down good, it's like he literally came over there and pushed me away. Like, boy, move out the way. And he put his arm around Tiffany. And he told her, like, you still got this, Grandpa? And, at the time, she wasn't my wife. Me and Tiffany might have been dating 6 months, a year or something, but that told me a lot about my grandfather as a man, and as the leader of our family. Like, he embraced my girlfriend. He didn't know she was going to be my wife and the woman I would have kids with, but that told me a lot about his character. And even for my sister and my wife to sit here, a lot of the legacy of who I am to my sister, and especially who I am to my wife, comes from my grandfather. And this is my mother's father. And it also was me seeing the way that he treated my father. In our family, we don't have in-laws. I've never seen my grandfather treat any of my uncles by marriage like they were anything other than his biological sons. And that's just the legacy that we're trying to carry on through the movement, through the podcast, through the apparel, through the forums, whatever it is, a lot of that is legacy. And you can see it in these two young ladies here. A lot of that is legacy on both sides. I appreciate my wife's uncles. I appreciate her stepfather. I appreciate Ken. I appreciate everybody that I've encountered who've indirectly become my father figures. And of course, on our side, you know, the lineage is 1,000 years old. So really, in closing, just give a brief synopsis, if I can get the word out. Give a brief synopsis of what advice from a woman's perspective would y'all give a father on what it means to be present for your kids?
For me, just in my home, with me being a single parent, I made a big deal about not making it about anything but the relationship that my children had with their father. That was the most important thing to me. As long as they had a relationship, then I was okay with that. I didn't care anything about money or what was going on. That didn't deter me from letting them build a relationship with their father. You know, just make sure that you leave the pathway open for those relationships to be built. Now, what they do with it is their choice, but to me, it's important not to take that choice away, because they do, no matter what the relationship is, they do need their fathers. And as they get older, if it's a strained relationship or something, they'll figure that out on their own. And I'm just there to support my kids in whatever they decide from there. But always leave it open for them to build that relationship with their father.
That's good.
When it comes to the relationship that Reggie has with our daughters, being there again, present, because no one's perfect, and when we try to live in this perfect light, then we are setting ourselves up for failure. And so the girls know that whatever he says, I'm gonna bag, and whatever I say, he's gonna bag. There's not a back door. Now, there's times where I do put. There's times where I do put the heat on him, and I allow him to be the bad person in certain situations. But it bounces back. It all depends on the season, the day. But what they do know is that we're going to stand together at the end. And that's even, you know, when it comes to the role that their grandfathers and all of that play. They know that no matter, they'll call their grandparents quickly if they feel like they can find a way out. But even the grandparents, they know whatever I say, whatever Reggie say, they have to stand on one accord with it, because we're a team. And I think more than anything, what fathers need to realize is that even if you're not in the house with your children, there's still a role that needs to be played. Indirectly, it can be done. You just have to work the avenues, and you have to put in the time and the energy.
That's good. Fathers, in a nutshell, presence provides structure. And what that is that means that you don't necessarily have to be in the home to provide a structure for the children. If you're present and if you're active, whether you and the mother are together or not, the kids will respect that presence, and it'll create some structure. So in closing, we just want to continue to encourage all fathers to be active, be present, without trying to be perfect. Again, this is the Father Figure Podcast. We want y'all to comment. We want you to like. We want you to share. But more than anything, subscribe to the channel, so that way you can get the alerts. You can get all the episodes. You don't have to miss anything. You can go back and revisit. But on behalf of Reggie George, the CEO and the founder of the Father Figure Movement, I want to thank my sister LaRissa, and I want to thank my wife Tiffany for being our guest tonight. Y'all be cool.